Let me read to you a passage from the 20th chapter of St. Luke's Gospel, verses 27 to 40. It's the Gospel for Saturday of the 33rd week of Ordinary Time. St. Luke writes, "Some Sadducees, those who deny that there is a resurrection, came forward and put this question to Jesus, saying, 'Teacher, Moses wrote for us, if someone's brother dies leaving a wife but no child, his brother must take the wife and raise up descendants for his brother. Now there were 7 brothers. The first married a woman but died childless. Then the second and the third married her, and likewise all 7 died childless. Finally the woman also died. Now at the resurrection, whose wife will that woman be? For all 7 had been married to her.' Jesus said to them, 'The children of this age marry and remarry, but those who are deemed worthy to attain to the coming age and to the resurrection of the dead neither marry nor are given in marriage. They can no longer die, for they are like angels, and they are the children of God because they are the ones who will rise. That the dead will rise even Moses made known in the passage about the bush, when he called the Lord the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. And he is not God of the dead, but of the living, for to him all are alive.' Some of the scribes said in reply, 'Teacher, you have answered well.' And they no longer dared to ask him anything." That's from Luke chapter 20, verse 27 to 40. We are led to think of the resurrection. I once helped someone to walk who had fractured her hip, and a person who was a nurse joined us. She told the person I was assisting that the technique in walking with that injury is to lift the good leg first when going upstairs and to move the bad leg first when going downstairs. That is to say, she said, that the good leg first when going up to heaven and the bad leg first when going down to hell. It was a gimmick to aid the sufferer to remember which leg to use first in going up or downstairs. Then, when visiting a rehabilitation centre elsewhere in Sydney, for those who had fractured hips and other parts of the body, I happened to be accompanying a person who was recovering there, and the physiotherapists explained the same thing with a genial smile. When going up to heaven, use the good leg first. When going down to hell, use the bad leg first. I then realized that this little phrase in which going up to heaven and down to hell are used to aid the memory of people who are rehabilitating was widely used among physiotherapists. That in turn reminded me of how elements of Christian doctrine are embedded in much of popular culture. Everyone knows of heaven up there and hell down there, even if they do not organize their lives in accord with these awesome doctrines. The therapists use it in this instance as a memory aid for those walking with a fractured hip. Well, now I mention this in passing to illustrate how accustomed we have become to these elements of Christian teaching, which is to say, to Christ's teaching. At least at a notional level, even if we do not have much realization of the matter, we accept the fact of an afterlife and the fact of heaven and hell, and therefore of a resurrection. Now the surprising thing is that there are many religions in which this is a very shadowy issue and far from clear. I would say that the greatest source for whatever popular acceptance there is in the world of the doctrines of heaven and hell, and in particular of the resurrection of the dead, is the person of Jesus Christ as expressed in Catholic teaching. Christ revealed to man with the greatest clarity that the doctrine of the resurrection of the dead is the case. In our Gospel passage that I read earlier from Luke chapter 20, our Lord is approached by a party within the Judaism of the time, the Sadducees, with an objection. We are told by St. Luke that they denied that there is a resurrection. Such a doctrine is, they would have thought, merely mythical and a product of imaginary hopes that take the religious person away from facing the realities of life. So they approach our Lord with a practical puzzle that illustrated the absurdity of expecting a future resurrection. It was the supposedly absurd and embarrassing situation in heaven where a wife is confronted with her 7 earthly husbands. Who will she count as her husband there? Who will she live with as her spouse in heaven? Our Lord dismissed the objection by pointing out that in heaven people do not live as husband and wife. They can no longer die, for they are like angels, and they are the children of God because they are the ones who will rise. In passing, such a statement by Christ implies certain things, not only about heaven, of course, but also about marriage. But more than anything, it is a resounding affirmation about the reality of life with God after death. The Christian believes in the resurrection from the dead. Our Lord adds ominously to the Sadducees that the resurrection is only for those who are deemed worthy to attain to the coming age. That is to say, after death comes the judgment, and our Lord does not let his listeners forget this. All will depend on the judgment of God. Following this judgment, those deemed worthy to attain the coming age and the resurrection of the dead will pass to life everlasting. For those not judged worthy to attain it, there will be everlasting death. The Sadducees were very much mistaken in their denial of the resurrection. They did not appreciate the unlimited power of God, nor did they know the Scriptures, and our Lord proceeds to quote the words of Yahweh God, implying the fact of the resurrection. Let us think often and much of the doctrine of the resurrection from the dead. More than anything, let us so live as to be judged worthy of it. We shall be worthy of it if we take our stand with Christ and live according to his way and in a manner pleasing to him. He is the way, the truth, and the life, and he will come again to judge the living and the dead. Of his kingdom there will be no end. Let our whole life be lived in the light of these great facts.